Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Strictly Broken Brews. I'm your host Christian Jahrbacher, and for this week I'm gonna talk about Vivid Strike. So as you see here, Vivid Strike is actually below Go Choose and Representation, but I'm just doing it in a more or less random order. It was basically the coincidence that I did ReZero first and then Kemono. And I'm doing Vivid Strike this week because it's basically got a really high representation to invite ratio. So this might be interesting to see or talk about. And since Vivid Strike isn't actually a very deep set in terms of how the meta deck looks like, will probably be done a bit faster than with Kimono this time. So it will probably help keeping the video length down. And yeah, I'm gonna drink a beer for this since as usual I was not very prepared for this. And we're gonna start with the winning list from Louisville TX. Oh, it wasn't the winning list, it was second list, but whatever. It was a topping list. And it's the green-blue version of the deck. And green-blue is basically the standard version of the deck. Like, this is what you should probably see the most often. Yeah, and the reason why you splash blue is mostly because there's this event card where you can sack a Rinne from field and heal the top card of your clock to your hand. So it's basically a heal counter that also doubles down as a sack counter. This has been seen before in Madoka as Sayaka's Wish and in Love Live Sunshine as like Rin's whatever the card is. Level 0 lineup is very similar for all Vivid Strike decks usually. As you will see with the next deck, he did something different. But like usually this will, like almost every Vivid Strike deck will look similar. It's usually 4 Rickies, this list only has 3, 4 Brainstorms, 3 to 4 of the back row. It makes the deck, it gives the deck a lot of power basically. I'll cover it in a bit. 1 hexproof support, 3 4 runners or any oversize. Usually people like the runner despite it being weak because it mills and the deck doesn't actually have a lot of free milling. It mills on play and it's a free runner. And then you have the handfix Rinne, and when it dies you can discard a card and summon this from Waiting Room. That's usually less. Like you don't use the effect that often, but you can do cute things like use this and then like have this in the back row or whatever at level 3 and then use the heal counter, sack this, then discard a card, summon another Rinne, and then heal counter again, so you get like 2 heal counter targets for the price of 1, sort of. Not really the price of 1, but you only need 1 on the field. Yeah, and it's also a hand fix, and like if you play it turn 1, the opponent might be deterred from killing it just because you then get a 1065 on the field at level 1, which they might not want to deal with. Okay, so basically level 1 is just a Shimakaze Climax combo and a 6-5 and a 2k backup. Some decks run the 2k backup, some decks don't, because there really isn't a lot you want to protect with the deck. You don't play regular assist, so the Rinne is like 6-5 is basically the biggest you get. And you don't really need to protect this card, you're just gonna like beat over the opponent's card the next turn anyways. Then we have an anti-change Suicida. You can play it or you can just skip on it. Most people decide to play this, whereas the sack counter, it's a sack counter, right? Yeah. Whereas the sack counter gets seen a bit less. But it still is just a classic pay 2, discard 1, pay 2 sack a character anti-change counter, and it's 2-5 backup. And then we basically get to why people play the deck and why you should play the deck if you want to play it, which is the 3-2 Fuka. You can only play it if you have 4 more other characters. On attack, you can look at the top card and give it to her as a marker, and the climax combo is with a bar. On attack, you can pay 2 ditch 1. Is it pay 2 ditch 1? No, it's pay 2, and you remove all the markers from it and deal X damage, where X the amount of markers under it is like single pings, or you repeat, deal 1 damage to the opponent X amount of times, basically. So this is a very powerful finisher if it stays on the field long enough, and the deck is basically built to maximize her staying on the field long enough by running a card like this, which reads, if a Fuka gets reversed that has a marker under it, you can pay 1 and put this under the Fuka and then rest the Fuka. So what this actually means for the game is that if the opponent has the Fuka out and like an Einhard in the back row, killing the Fuka is actually really bad, because if you kill it, she just gets more markers and is gonna ping for more damage. So if you can't actually permanently remove the Fuka, what you should do is just ram into that lane and not kill the Fuka, because killing the Fuka just makes the opponent's finisher stronger. It's a different scenario if like the opponent has 2 Fukas and only one of the Einhard in the back row. Of course, if you can kill 2 then you should kill. Then you should just remove the one and be content with the other one getting bigger. Maybe you're lucky and they don't have like a second one of this, and you can kill it again the next turn or whatever. Then there's a clock kick. It digs for the climax. It is on play check top 3. Gains 500 for everybody else, and on reverse on both turns, that's important, you can discard 2 characters to clock, or discard 2 cards or 2 characters. I think it's 2 characters to clock kick. And then you have an early play heal, 2 or less CX, and it gains power. The important part about this card is that it has rename name, so you can sack it to this, and this is just basically your heal engine, and this is your finisher. So the thing that makes Vivid more or less stand out is definitely the finisher, and the reason for that is that it's really hard to interact with and it can be really potent. Well, it's not really hard to interact with, but some decks just can't deal with it, and those decks that can't deal with it have a really tough Vivid matchup. Coincidentally, like the quote-unquote best decks usually have a way of dealing with Fuka, so Vivid falls into that weird spot where it's really good against a lot of weaker decks, but it actually struggles against the better decks, so that's something you might want to consider if you bring it to a tournament. In terms of how it gets outed, it's usually anti-change bombs or like bottom deck anti-change suiciders or stuff along those lines. What helps against this is obviously the hexproof support, but what Vivid really wants to do to actually win the game, and why I think you should run 4 of the Fuka, though 3 is fine, is it wants to early summon Fuka and then go neg 1 to summon another Fuka at 2. And the reason for that being is that a lot of decks can deal with 1 Fuka. They actually can't deal with 2, so 1 always survives, or most decks can't deal with 2, so 1 usually survives. And for the decks that don't have an answer, if you have 2 Fukas out, you just basically crush them, because you basically confirm so much damage for you, or so many pings, that it's really hard for the opponent to still win the game. You just finish them. You obviously shouldn't do the double Fuka play where you neg yourself if you're up against something that can actually remove both Fukas, which is, for example, if you don't have the hexproof support, Telovru or Telovru, or even if you have the hexproof support like Chain Chronicle can remove 2 Fukas. Triad Primus can remove 2 Fukas. Let me check here. ReZero can only remove 1. Kemono will usually remove none of them, but since Kemono denies the burns from the Fuka because of the anti-burn, Vivid is just really neutered, which is also like something that's very relevant, that Kemono might be a big deck going forward, and Kemono is really good against Vivid. Gochusa can't deal with Fuka at all. Gochusa just gets fucked. Vivid Strike has like this is like probably one of the reasons you play the anti-change clock bomb for the mirror, because it just can remove one of the Fukas. Rewrite can kill the Fukas, but they can't actually, like, yes, they can permanently remove. There's like either they play the anti-change bomb, or they play the bar combo with the Shizuru top check, and the bar combo with the Shizuru top check basically nukes the back row. So it forces the opponent to 3-stock the Ironheart if they want to save one of the Fukas, which is, like, that's usually a fairly even trade-off, because both the Rewrite play and the Vivid player committed a lot of resources, but it usually hurts the Vivid player more if the Rewrite player actually gets to do the bar combo. But the bar combo is, by the way, the Lucia that gives neg 4k to the entire opponent's board, so you kill the background and they can't save the Fuka via the marker Einhard. Prismalia, depending on the build, has like the anti-change clock bombs or anti-change suicides, anti-change counters, but anti-change counters again only work for Fukas on the side lanes, or if the opponent doesn't have the Hexproof Assist. So you see the Hexproof Assist is actually very relevant in protecting Fuka in a lot of scenarios. Yeah. So, I mean, there's really not a lot to talk about with this deck, but in conclusion, if you expect a lot of Kimono, or if you expect a lot of like the best decks, then Vivid might not be the best choice. But if you like expect a general, like a basic playing field, you can probably do really well with this deck, because it's just on a baseline it does very powerful things that can't easily be answered by a lot of decks. And if the decks like aren't built in a way to beat Vivid, then they usually just lose the matchup against it, because the things Fuka does is just, they are just so powerful. Okay, I got stuck a bit there. The second list is actually, like, usually the two builds that you see are the green-blue one. You splash the blue for Scuderia for the heal counter, or the mono green one, and there's a couple different variations of the mono green one. I took one out that topped in San Diego because it just looked very interesting, I guess. Or it looked a bit different from the way I'm usually used to seeing how this deck plays. And I'll cover a bit how, like, I think the usual green deck looks. Just talk about it. It's like a similar lineup in Ricky, Brainstorm, and Marker, but you already see he's running less of the Marker card, for example, which is also reflected here by only 2 of the Fuka, so he's actually not on the double Fuka early summon plan, which is really weird, for me, at least. But he's playing 2 of the Hexproof Assist, 2 of the Clock Bomb, because he likes the Clock Bomb, I guess. 2 beaters, 1 utility card. This is top check 2, and on cancel go to stock. This is a drop searcher? Yes, should be a drop searcher. Yes. And then at level 1, he takes advantage of like being green by running the 1065 level 2. That's basically 6-5 level 2 if you only have green characters. Checks for the trait that only the green characters have. And you can't use Encore when it dies. But interestingly enough, like, he's only playing 1 counter, despite like playing a bit more of a power game. Well, I guess it doesn't. Well, both decks just play 6-5, so I guess it doesn't matter. And at level 2, he's also playing the clock set, also playing the anti-change counter. But here's like a pretty big difference. He's also playing the burn counter, which is something you usually don't see, but is something you can definitely play. You probably have to stock for it, so seems like a decent inclusion. He's playing 3 of the changer that changes into the trial deck healer. So he's not running the Renewally play, so he's instead running the trial deck healer and summons it via the change, which is not as expensive as it looks, but it's I just think the Rene is overall a better card. This is 500 bigger than the Rene, but you don't get the extra utility out of it. And it's the same like 2 Clock Kicks, 2 Fukas. And then he runs 3 of this event, which basically checks top 3 for any green card, including Climaxes, which is pretty neat. And then you give a character 2k. I don't think this is necessary in like Vivid, because Vivid, actually what I forgot to mention is Vivid will always play 8 bars. So you're not usually that starved for your Climax combos and don't really need dig. And what helps with these 8 bars is the Vivid Brainstorm. Because it has, when you trigger the bar, you can discard a card, clock swap something to hand, and then take the top card of your clock as damage. So you can discard the bars that you just triggered. Important to notice that you still resolve like the stock first before you discard with the bar. So don't be careful of the timings when you trigger this. Basically is what I mean. When you trigger this effect. Yeah. What you might see in terms of green is there's an event that gives Fook characters extra markers if they already have markers, and then they might play the 1/1 that gains markers on each attack, and possibly the 0/0 that gains markers on each attack. Though that's then more of a fun build usually. Like the 1/1 sees play, but the 0/0 usually doesn't. And yeah. Strengths and weaknesses are basically the same as the other deck, though this is less all-in on Fuka, but it's also, in that sense, less powerful, because it isn't as all-in on Fuka, and Fuka is clearly the strongest card in the set. Yeah, this was, I guess, a short video, but maybe you learned something, maybe I was just talking whatever you already knew about the set. But maybe some of you understand like better what they can do against it now, and what they why you should play the deck or why not. See you next week. Bye.